The first time it happened, I told myself it was nothing. You learn to do that in saturation. You learn to live inside a steel tube, breathe recycled gas, and trust a checklist more than your own instincts. Down there, fear is expensive. Panic burns oxygen and makes stupid decisions feel urgent. So you file things away. You label them. You keep moving. I'm a deep-sea welder, saturation diver. The kind of job where your office is a bell, the size of a closet. Your hands are wrapped in thick gloves that turn every bolt into an argument. And your lifeline is a bundle of hoses and cables, the umbilical, feeding you heat, gas, comms, and hope. Out here, the ocean is not romantic. It's weight. At depth, the water presses on you from all directions with the patient certainty of physics. You don't swim, not really. You work. You clip in. You follow the line. You do your weld. You get back to the bell. You don't improvise. We were on a repair job 200 miles off the coast, out past the shipping lanes where the horizon feels like a closed circle. Officially, it was a pipeline bracket that had cracked during a storm. Unofficially, it was one of those jobs you don't ask too many questions about. Because the pay is good, and the paperwork is thick. My day started the way it always did. Dive brief, comm check, tool check. Then the long, slow descent in the bell while topside chatter filtered through the headset like faraway radio. Bell to sat, comms check, I said. Voice calm, professional. Like I wasn't about to step into a world that could kill me without trying. Sat copies, came the reply, distorted slightly by the helium mix. You're good, Jace. My real name isn't important, and even if it was, we don't use full names down there. It's tradition and superstition, and common sense all braided together. You keep language simple. You keep it functional. We hit working depth and equalized. The bell's hatch opened with a metallic clunk that I felt in my ribs. Black water waited beyond it, lit only by the work lights and the thin beam of my helmet lamp. I clipped my tether, checked my bailout bottle, and climbed out. The first few minutes outside the bell are always the same. Adjust buoyancy, orient, find your line. Your world shrinks to whatever your light touches. Everything beyond it is a suggestion. My partner, Malik, followed a few seconds behind me, and his voice came through comms like a calm metronome. Umbilical clear. You good? Good, I replied. We moved along the guideline toward the structure. The pipeline loomed into view like a dark rib in the water, brackets and clamps, slick with marine growth. The repair site was marked with a strobe that blinked slow and steady. An underwater heartbeat. I set up my welding gear, positioned myself, and began the work. It was routine enough that my mind slipped into the familiar tunnel of procedure. Clean the surface, grind, check fit, strike arc, run bead. The ocean around me was quiet, except for my own breathing and the faint hiss of gas in my helmet. Every exhale sounded like it belonged to someone else. Then, I felt it. Tap, tap, tap. 3 short taps. On the left side of my helmet. Not hard, not violent. Like someone knocking politely on a door. My whole body went rigid. At depth, you expect vibrations. Current can swing your umbilical into you. Tools can bump your dome. A stray piece of debris can drift by. But these taps were placed, evenly spaced. The kind of rhythm a person makes when they want you to notice. I froze and waited for the obvious explanation to present itself. Nothing bumped me again. No surge of current. No clang from my tools. Malik didn't collide with me. My breathing grew louder in my ears. I forced myself to speak, keeping my voice flat. Topside. You copy any contact on my dome. A pause, static. Then the supervisor's voice, Rourke, came through, annoyed in the way men get when your fear complicates their schedule. Negative, Rourke said. Probably thermal contraction. Keep working. Thermal contraction. Underwater. At that depth. It was a kind of answer you give when you don't want to have a conversation. Copy, I said, because what else do you say? I went back to my weld. My hands were steady. That's the thing people don't understand about this job. You can be terrified and still do the work. Terror doesn't always look like screaming. Sometimes it looks like hyperfocus, like your body trying to buy time by doing the only thing it knows how to do correctly. I ran another bead. The arc hissed. Sparks bloomed and died in the water like tiny dying stars. And then, tap, tap, tap. Same pattern, same side of the helmet. This time, I felt it more clearly. Not a vibration transmitted through my tools. Not a bump from outside water movement. A direct, localized contact on the shell. I stopped welding and turned my helmet light slowly, scanning left. Nothing. Just open water and drifting silt in the beam, like a snowstorm trapped underwater. Malik's voice cut in, quieter. You hear that too? My stomach dropped. You felt it? A pause, then, yeah, Malik said. 3 taps. My throat tightened. The worst part of fear is when it stops being private. When someone else confirms it, it becomes real in a way you can't talk yourself out of. Rourke came back on comms, sharper now. Quit chatting. Finish the bracket. You're burning time. I wanted to snap back at him. I wanted to ask if he'd ever had something knock on his head, 1,000 feet down. Instead, I said, copy, and forced my hands back to work. We finished the weld in tense silence, Malik hovering close enough that his light overlapped mine. 2 cones of illumination in a world that didn't want to be seen. On the way back to the bell, I kept expecting the taps again. They didn't come. That should have been a relief. It wasn't. It felt like whatever had tapped my helmet had gotten what it wanted already. Back inside the bell, once the hatch was sealed, and the warm artificial air surrounded us, Malik and I sat in our harnesses and stared at each other like we'd both had the same nightmare. Rourke's voice crackled over comms. Good work. Log the repair, and get ready for decompression schedule. Copy, I said automatically. Then, because I couldn't stop myself, I asked, Rourke, did the camera feed cut out at all during our weld? A beat of silence. Then Rourke said too quickly, negative. But I'd been doing this long enough to know when someone was lying through their teeth. After we were back in the sat chamber and out of our gear, I went to the rack where they kept the dive logs and the footage downloads. It was routine. Grab the clip, tag it with the job number, file it. Paperwork keeping people honest. I pulled up the recording from my helmet cam. The timestamp was there, the bracket was there, the weld arc was there, and then, right when the first 3 taps hit my helmet, the video glitched. Not static, not snow, a clean half-second gap. The image skipped forward, like someone had cut a frame out with a razor. I stared at it until my eyes watered. Malik came up behind me, breathing close. That's edited. I swallowed hard. Then, through the speakers on the playback station, under the normal comms track, I heard something that hadn't been there in real time. A second voice. Not Rourke, not Malik, not me. A whisper, low and intimate, threaded under the audio like a parasite. Don't answer it back. I snapped the playback off so hard. My finger hurt. The room went quiet, except for the hum of life support. Malik stared at me, face pale, and somewhere in the steel walls of the saturation chamber, very faintly, like a joke told by the ocean itself, something tapped. 3 times. The tapping in saturation didn't feel like sound. It felt like memory. Like my skull had saved the sensation of those 3 taps and replayed it against the inside of the chamber walls, the way your body replays a near. Miss when you're trying to sleep, except this wasn't in my head. Malik heard it too. He lifted his gaze toward the steel bulkhead, like someone had knocked from the other side. Tap, tap, tap. Then, nothing. The silence afterward was worse than the noise. It had that same patient quality as the deep, not the absence of danger, but the absence of motion. Something waiting. Malik's eyes were wide behind his stubble. Tell me you heard that. I heard it, I said, keeping my voice low, even though we were inside a steel tube, 1,000 feet above the seabed. It felt stupid to whisper in saturation. It also felt necessary. Malik swallowed. He glanced toward the comms panel, as if expecting it to crackle again with that whisper. You think Rourke knows? I thought of the way he'd said negative too fast, the way the feed had cleanly skipped, the way the second voice had been threaded under the audio, like it belonged there. Rourke knows something, I said. Whether he understands it, I don't know. We sat there in the dim chamber light, surrounded by the constant low hiss of life support. Trying not to look like two grown men rattled by a knock. In saturation, you get good at pretending. Pretending you're not tired. Pretending your skin doesn't itch. Pretending you're not scared of the fact that, if something goes wrong, you don't go to the hospital. You become a problem they solve with procedure and paperwork. Malik leaned closer when the whisper said, "Don't answer it back." What does that mean? I hesitated, because I already knew what it meant. I'd heard about it in the way you hear about a weird current or an old wreck. Half jokes, half warnings, passed around in mess halls and dive shacks. Tapping. The old superstition. I'd never taken it seriously because most divers have at least one superstition, and they're usually harmless. Don't whistle in the bell. Don't say last dive. Don't name the sea. But this felt less like superstition, and more like protocol that never made it onto an official checklist. It means don't respond, I said finally. Don't tap back. Don't acknowledge. Malik's jaw tightened. Why would anyone tap back? Because it's human, I said quietly. Someone knocks, you knock back. Malik stared at the steel wall like it was listening. So who's knocking? I didn't answer. I didn't have an answer that wouldn't make me sound insane. Instead, I said, we need to talk to someone who's been on this boat longer than Rourke. Malik gave a shaky nod. Like who? Doc, I said, thinking of the saturation medic, an older guy named Harlan who'd patched up more divers than most people had met. Or Hux. Hux was one of the old hands on the vessel, a bellman who'd seen a lot of jobs, a lot of crews. The kind of man who spoke in short sentences and hated mystery, because mystery got people killed. We waited until the next chamber check, when Harlan came to take vitals and log our condition. He was a compact man with graying hair and calm eyes. He moved with the same discipline you see in combat medics. Fast, careful, not wasting motion. He checked Malik's pulse, checked mine, and filled out the log without looking up. How's the weld? He asked. Fine, Malik said automatically. Harlan glanced up finally, and his gaze lingered on our faces. That's not an answer, he said flatly. I held his eyes. We had contact on our helmets. Harlan didn't react the way a normal person would. No confusion, no disbelief. Just a slight tightening around the eyes, like he'd been hoping we wouldn't say that sentence. What kind of contact? He asked. 3 taps, I said, on the dome. Harlan's pen paused mid-stroke. He didn't look at the walls. He didn't look toward the comms. He just stared at us like he was deciding whether to lie. Then he said quietly, Did either of you tap back? Malik shook his head hard. No. I hesitated. And that hesitation was enough. Harlan's eyes sharpened. Jace. I swallowed. I didn't. I started. Malik's head snapped toward me. You did. I exhaled slowly. Not outside, I said. Not down there. But, when we got back in the bell and I was pissed, I knocked my knuckles against the inside of my helmet. Just once. It sounded pathetic out loud. A tiny act of frustration. A harmless human thing. Harlan's face went pale. What? Malik whispered. Harlan lowered his voice. You never do that, he said. Never. Not even joking. My throat tightened. Why? Harlan took a slow breath, then said, Because the deep doesn't care about jokes. He glanced toward the chamber door, then back at us. Listen, he said. This isn't official. There's no box for it on the form. But on certain lines, certain rigs, certain depths, there's something that uses tapping. Uses it how? Malik asked. Harlan's jaw clenched. Like a language, he said. Like a test. My stomach rolled. Harlan continued, voice low and controlled. 3 taps means it's aware of you. If you tap back, it marks you as responsive. If you count the taps out loud, you give it timing. If you shine your light into open water behind you when it's tapping, you give it a face. Malik stared at him, horrified. A face. Harlan nodded once. Something to recognize, he said. I swallowed. That's insane. Harlan's eyes didn't waver, you asked, he said. And you don't have to believe me, but you need to decide what you're going to do next time it happens. My throat tightened. Next time, Harlan didn't answer, because the tapping answered for him. Tap, tap, tap. This time, it wasn't in the wall. It was in my helmet. My dive helmet sat on the rack in the corner of the chamber, drained and cleaned. Faceplate turned slightly toward us like a skull on a shelf. 3 taps struck the shell. Not hard. Not enough to knock it over. Just enough to make the metal ring faintly. Malik's breath hitched. He stared at the helmet, like it might suddenly sit up. Harlan didn't flinch. He just closed his eyes briefly, like a man hearing an alarm he can't silence. Don't, he whispered. My hands shook. I wanted to step back. I wanted to grab the helmet and throw it across the chamber, like that would prove I was still in control. Instead, my body did something worse. Without thinking, my knuckles lifted. Half an inch, a reflex beginning. Harlan's hand snapped out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was iron. No, he said, voice hard. You don't answer it. I swallowed hard, breathing shallow. It's tapping my helmet in the chamber. Harlan nodded, jaw clenched. Yeah, he said quietly. That's why the rule is never respond. It follows the conversation. It doesn't care where you are. The tapping came again. Tap. Tap. Then, after a pause, the pattern changed. Tap. Tap. 2 taps. Then, 1. My stomach dropped. Malik whispered. It's counting down. Harlan's eyes snapped to Malik. Don't say that, he hissed. Too late. The chamber lights flickered once, sharp and brief, and my helmet on the rack shifted. Not toppled. Shifted. Like something inside it had moved. Malik let out a strangled sound. Harlan's face went gray. You too, he said, voice tight. From now on, no talking about it out loud. No repeating patterns. No guessing what it means. You follow procedure, and you keep your mouth shut. I swallowed. What procedure? Harlan's gaze locked on mine. The procedure that keeps you alive, he said. You ignore it. The tapping stopped. Silence returned. And in that silence, I became aware of something that made my skin crawl. The taps hadn't sounded like metal being struck from outside. They sounded like someone tapping from inside the helmet shell. Like the knocking wasn't trying to get in. Like it was already in there with the part of my world that kept me breathing. And it wanted a response. By the next dive window, everyone was acting like nothing had happened. That's another saturation skill. Selective amnesia. You log what the company requires. You do your decompression math. You eat your bland meals. And you don't bring ghosts into a chamber where people already have enough reasons to lose their minds. Rourke came on comms with the same brisk tone he always used. Like he could bully the ocean into behaving. Bell and 15, same site, same bracket line. We're finishing the run. Malik's eyes met mine through the chamber glass. He looked tired in the way sleep doesn't fix. I thought of Harlan's grip on my wrist. The rule, don't respond, don't count, don't guess. I also thought of the whisper on the footage. Don't answer it back. The problem was, I hadn't meant to answer in the first place. My body had simply done what bodies do when something knocks. We suited up in silence. Helmet, harness, bailout, umbilical. Every piece of gear felt heavier than it had yesterday, like the ocean had added weight to it while I slept. When I locked my helmet on and the seal engaged, my breathing turned into that familiar loud intimacy. In a helmet, you can hear yourself too well. Every inhale is a confession. Malik clipped in beside me at the bell hatch. Comms check, I said automatically. Copy, Malik replied. Rourke's voice crackled. You two ready? Ready, I said, and hated the word. We descended. Out the bell hatch, black water swallowed our lights. The structure waited below like a skeleton of metal beams and clamps. Marine growth waved slowly in the current like hair. I kept my light tight. I didn't scan open water. I didn't do the nervous diver thing of looking behind you every 10 seconds. The tapping didn't come right away. That should have been relief. It felt like suspense instead. We reached the repair zone, and I set up on the bracket line, steadying myself with one gloved hand on the steel while the other positioned the torch. The weld itself was clean, routine, almost soothing. The arc hiss, the glow, the certainty that metal would behave the way metal always behaves if you do it right. For 10 minutes, it was just work. Then Malik's voice came through comms, quiet and strained. "Jace, you seeing that?" My stomach tightened. "Seeing what?" "Off your 3 o'clock, he whispered. "Don't turn fast." I froze my hands mid-motion, and forced myself not to snap my head around. "Describe it," I said, voice flat. A beat of silence, then Malik said, "Black patch." "What?" "Not dark water," he clarified, breathing shallow. "Not shadow, it's like missing visibility. Like somebody cut a hole in what your light can show." My mouth went dry. I moved my helmet light slowly, carefully, sweeping without whipping my head. At first, I saw nothing. Then, I saw it. A shape in the water that wasn't a shape. A void. My beam hit it and didn't bounce back. It didn't illuminate particles. It didn't show silt or plankton or anything. It was like the ocean had been edited. A section of water about the size of a door, hanging in the current, perfectly still, while everything around it drifted and swayed. My stomach clenched hard enough to hurt. Rourke's voice cut in sharply. "Quit sight. Seeing, finish the weld." I didn't respond. I stared at the black patch, and felt the pressure in my ears change. Subtle, like depth shifting, even though my gauges stayed steady. Then, tap, tap, tap. 3 taps. This time, they came from the right side of my helmet, not the left. A repositioning. A correction. My breath caught in my throat. Malik's voice trembled. It's moved. I wanted to ask what he meant. I didn't. Because the answer came in the form of another tap. Single, slow, like a finger on glass. Tap. Then, a pause. Then, tap, tap. 2 quick ones. My stomach dropped. The pattern again. 3, 2, 1. A countdown. I forced my eyes back to the work, because Harlan had been clear. Don't stare at it. Don't guess. But the black patch was at the edge of my peripheral vision now, and it felt closer without changing size. Rourke's voice came again, annoyed. "Malik, you copy, Jace. You copy. I'm getting noise on your feed." Noise. Static. The whisper. I didn't answer right away, and that delay felt dangerous. "Copy," I said carefully. Malik echoed. "Copy." A burst of static fizzed through my headset. Brief, sharp, then cleared. Underneath it, for half a second, I heard a sound that didn't belong on comms. A faint tapping, as if something had found the line. My throat tightened. Then, I saw something else. My wrist slate. My diver's slate strapped to my left forearm, had writing on it. I hadn't written anything. It was a grease. Pencil scrawl, blocky and firm as if someone had pressed hard. Turn around slowly. My stomach dropped to the seabed. I didn't move. Malik's breathing came fast over comms. "What is it?" he whispered. I couldn't answer without saying what I'd seen, and saying it out loud felt like agreeing. Instead, I raised my wrist slightly and angled my helmet light down at it, hoping Malik would see it too. He went quiet. Then, very softly, he said, "Don't." I swallowed hard. My body wanted to obey the instruction, because instructions are what keep you alive down here. If a supervisor says turn a valve, you turn it. If a dive plan says ascend, you ascend. But this instruction didn't come from a supervisor. It came from nowhere. Or worse, somewhere that knew what my instincts were. Tap. 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 Now, the taps were on the back of my helmet, directly behind my head. My heart hammered. Malik's voice rose in panic. "Rourke, we're aborting some things." Rourke cut him off instantly. "Negative. You don't abort without my call. Finish the weld and get back to the bell." Malik's breathing was ragged. "Sir." A new voice slid into comms, low and intimate, threaded beneath Rourke's signal, like an undertone. Not the whisper from the playback station. A clearer one. "Turn around," it murmured. My stomach turned to ice. It sounded like my own voice, The black patch in the water rippled slightly, like a curtain moving in slow current. And in that ripple, I saw a pinpoint of light, a helmet lamp, moving in the distance, aimed directly at me. My helmet light. The same beam angle, the same faint flare at the edge from a scratch on my faceplate, except I was holding my light steady on my slate. So why was there another beam in the dark, shining back at me like a mirror? Malik made a choking sound. That's you. The tapping on my helmet stopped. The silence that followed felt like the moment before something touches you. And then, very gently, something tugged my umbilical. Just enough to make the line go taut, like a curious hand testing a leash. I didn't answer it back. I didn't tap. I didn't turn. I just held still in the black water, staring at writing on my slate that hadn't been there a minute ago, while something in the deep tried to decide which version of me it liked better. We aborted anyway. Not cleanly, not with Rourke's permission. Malik made the call with his body before his mouth could get us killed. He grabbed my harness strap and yanked, hard twice. The old hand signaled for back to bell now. He didn't wait for my response. He started moving, hauling his umbilical like it weighed 100 pounds. The moment he moved, the black patch in the water shifted. Not drifting like silt. Sliding. Keeping pace at the edge of our lights, as if it was tethered to us by attention alone. My slate still read. Turn around slowly. I kept my eyes forward and let Malik pull me. I didn't look back. I didn't shine my light behind me. But I felt it. A pressure at the back of my helmet. Not physical contact this time. Presence. Like standing too close to a speaker with the bass turned up, except the vibration was inside my skull. Rourke's voice raged in my ears. What the hell are you doing? Get back on task. Malik didn't answer. He just breathed hard, moving fast. I forced my voice steady, sat to bell, returning. Negative, Rourke snapped. Negative. You return when I say. Static surged. A thick wash of noise. Like someone poured sand into the comms line. Then, beneath it, that intimate voice again. My voice. But wrong in the timing. You can't leave yet, it murmured. My stomach turned to ice. Malik's breath caught. He made a strangled sound, then forced a reply through clenched teeth. Bell in sight. The bell lights appeared ahead, like a small safe planet. The hatch hung open, waiting. The closer we got, the more the water seemed to resist us. It wasn't current. It felt like pushing through thick gel. My movements slowed, heavy and delayed. Malik reached the bell first and grabbed the handrail, hauling himself in. He reached back, grabbed my wrist, and yanked. The moment my helmet crossed the threshold of the bell hatch, the pressure released. The black patch outside didn't follow. It stopped at the mouth of the hatch, like an animal that knew better than to enter a cage. For a second, it hung there in the water, perfectly still. Then it rippled once, slow and deliberate, and the tapping returned, 3 taps. But not on my helmet, on the bell's outer hull. Tap, 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 as if it was reminding us it could knock on anything. Malik slammed the hatch shut and spun the wheel lock with shaking hands. The metal clanged and sealed. The bell's interior pressure stabilized with a soft hiss. We sat in our harnesses, panting, eyes wide, staring at each other, like we'd both just survived something we couldn't explain. Rourke's voice came through again, stripped of anger now, and replaced with something colder. Report, he said. Malik stared at the comms panel like it might bite. We're aborting due to anomalous conditions, he said finally, voice flat. There was a pause. Then Rourke said too calmly, You don't use that phrase. My stomach clenched. What phrase? Anomalous, Rourke repeated. You don't write that in a log. Malik's face went pale. Why? Rourke's voice sharpened. Because it becomes official. Silence. Then Rourke added, quieter. I'm sending Harlan. Back in sat. Harlan didn't ask how the dive went. He walked in, took one look at Malik's face, and locked the chamber hatch behind him, like he didn't want sound leaking out. He checked our vitals quickly, hands steady, eyes not meeting ours. Then he said, low and hard, Which one of you answered it? Malik's jaw clenched. Nobody. Harlan's gaze snapped to me. I swallowed hard. I didn't. Harlan stared at me for a long beat, then nodded once as if deciding whether to believe me. Good, he said, not sounding relieved. Malik's voice trembled. Harlan, there was a hole. A black patch in the water, and it. Harlan held up a hand. Stop describing it, he hissed. Don't draw it in your head. Don't give it detail. My stomach dropped. You've seen it. Harlan didn't answer immediately. He pulled a binder off the shelf behind him, one of the vessel's medical safety binders, thick and laminated, pages stained by years of use. He flipped past standard procedures until he hit a tab with no label. He paused, then looked at us. This isn't supposed to be in here, he said quietly. He turned the binder around. A sealed incident log page was clipped inside a plastic sleeve, stamped in red. Internal, do not copy, do not discuss. The header date was 5 years ago. Under incident summary, someone had written. Diver responded to tapping. Diver returned to bell compliant and smiling. Post-dive speech consisted of repeated checklist phrases and unknown syllables. Diver attempted to complete the procedure on chamber wall with fingernails. Diver expired during decompression after refusing oxygen mask, stating, I am not permitted to surface. My skin turned to ice. Malik swallowed hard. What was tapping him? Harlan's eyes were tired. Same thing that tapped you, he said. It changes its methods, but it always starts with knocking. I stared at the page until my eyes blurred. Why didn't anyone tell us? Harlan's mouth tightened. Because the company doesn't acknowledge it, he said. And the divers who know don't talk because talking makes it interested. My stomach clenched. Harlan flipped to the bottom of the page where a note had been added in a different handwriting, sharper and more recent. If you hear tapping, do not respond. Do not count. Do not turn fast. Do not broadcast names. Do not play back audio. My throat tightened. Playback audio. Harlan's eyes flicked to me, and I knew he'd seen the look on my face when I mentioned the whisper on the footage. You watched the clip, he said. I swallowed. Yes. Harlan's jaw clenched. Don't do that again, he said. It uses recordings like doors. Malik's voice cracked. What does it want? Harlan stared at us for a long moment. Then he said, the worst possible thing. It wants you to finish something, he whispered. A procedure it can't complete by itself. My stomach churned. A weld. Harlan shook his head slightly. Not the metal, he said. You. He reached into a drawer and pulled out another sheet. This one newer, printed clean, and clipped to the incident log like an update. Job modification. Effective immediately. Dive team. J.C. Malik. Date. Tomorrow. Objective. Repair cut. At Site B, -17. Note. Do not deviate from route. My blood ran cold. Tomorrow's date. Our names. A site designation I'd never seen in the work order, and a word that made my stomach drop because it sounded too deliberate to be a crack or bracket failure. Cut. Malik stared at the page, shaking. That's not our job. Harlan's eyes were bleak. It is now, he said, because it wrote it into the log. I felt my skin prickle, and for the first time I understood the danger wasn't just at depth. It was in paperwork, in schedules. In the way the company could claim, it was all normal, because the form said so. Harlan leaned closer, voice low and urgent. If you go down tomorrow, he whispered, don't try to be brave, try to be boring. He tapped the incident page. Procedure is the only thing that keeps you alive, he said. And it's learning your procedure. Then, as if to punctuate him, the saturation chamber wall behind us vibrated. 3 soft taps, from inside the steel, like someone knocking politely, reminding us they'd already scheduled our next conversation. By morning, the job board had been updated, not in the way a supervisor changes a plan after a briefing, in the way a system updates itself overnight and pretends it was always that way. Site B, -17, repair cut. Do not deviate from route. Rourke read it to us through comms with a voice too steady, like he was trying to convince himself it was normal. You two will descend. Follow the guideline to B-17 and seal the cut. Simple. Malik's eyes were bloodshot. He hadn't slept. I don't think I had either, but Malik looked like a man who'd been arguing with his own mind all night and losing. What cut? Malik asked. Rourke's tone tightened. A cut in the line. That wasn't on yesterday's plan, Malik said. It's on today's, Rourke replied. The kind of answer management loves because it kills the past. Quit questioning it. In the chamber, Harlan tightened my harness straps, with hands that were calm, only because he'd learned how not to shake. Remember, he said low, be boring, follow your checklist, and if you get a choice between curiosity and oxygen, pick oxygen. Malik gave a bitter, shaky laugh. That's easy to say when you're not the one with something knocking on your head. Harlan's eyes flashed. That's why I'm saying it, he hissed. Because you won't say it to yourselves. We suited up and entered the bell. The descent felt longer than yesterday. The bell light seemed dimmer. The water outside the viewports looked thicker, like the ocean had gained viscosity overnight. When the hatch opened, the cold black water pressed in with immediate weight. I clipped to the guideline and climbed out. Malik behind me. Rourke. Ez's voice came through comms. Proceed to B-17. Stay on the line. Copy, I said. We moved along the line, our helmet lights tight and controlled. I didn't scan open water. I didn't chase shadows. I kept my beam on the rope, the clamps, the metal ribs of the structure. After 5 minutes, I realized something that made my stomach clench. The line we were following was newer than the rest. The rope was cleaner, less fouled with growth. The attachment points were freshly placed, shiny metal catching the light like recent work. Did they run a new guideline? I asked, then regretted speaking at all. Rourke answered too fast. Standard practice. Malik's breathing came loud over comms. Since when? Since now, Rourke snapped. We followed the line anyway, because that's what you do when you're deep, and you don't have better options. The structure changed as we moved, less pipe, more framework. The sea floor rose slightly, then dropped again. My depth gauge stayed steady, but my body felt the pressure fluctuate in small waves, as if we were passing through layers of different density. Then, we reached B-17. There wasn't a crack. There wasn't a bracket failure. There was a clean cut in the metal. A circular opening, about the size of a manhole, sliced into a thick section of pipeline casing. The edges were smooth, too smooth for storm damage. It looked machined, intentional, like a hatch. Malik froze beside me, helmet light fixed on it. His voice came out thin. That's not a repair. Rourke's voice clipped. It is. Seal it. Seal a hole someone cut. Malik shot back. Rourke's tone sharpened. Don't care why it's there. Care that it's there. You weld it shut. I stared at the opening. Inside it was darkness, but not the normal deep. See darkness where your light dies at a distance. This darkness swallowed light instantly, like the black patch Malik had described. A void. A missing section of water. My stomach dropped. The tapping started. Not on my helmet. On my umbilical. 3 gentle pulses that traveled up the line like a hand, plucking a rope. Tap. 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 Malik made a broken sound. It's on the line. Rourke's voice came through, suddenly distorted. Proceed. 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 It repeated 3 times, identical, like a recording stuck. Then it changed into my voice. Not a whisper. Full volume in my headset. Perfectly copied. Proceed, my voice said. My stomach turned to ice. I forced myself to stay still, because Harlan's instruction echoed. Be boring. Follow checklist. Don't improvise. But the checklist didn't have a step for hearing your own voice. Order you toward a hole in the ocean. Malik's helmet light shook. He whispered. Jace, look. I didn't want to, but my eyes tracked the direction of his beam. The umbilical line between me and the bell was moving, not drifting with current, being stroked. A slow, gentle pull along the cable, like fingers sliding down it. Then the line went taut for half a second, like something had held it, tested it, My throat tightened. Topside, confirmed tension on my umbilical. Rourke's voice back to normal snapped. Negative. Stop stalling. But I felt it again. Another gentle tug. Malik's voice cracked. There's something on the line. I can see it. No, I can't. His words dissolved into static. The comms hissed, then cleared. And in the sudden quiet, I saw something that made my stomach drop through the seabed. Far out beyond the opening, just at the edge of visibility, there was a moving light. A helmet lamp. The same beam pattern as mine. The same faint flare from the scratch on my faceplate. My light. But my helmet was still pointed at the cut. The distant beam swept slowly back and forth, like someone searching. Then, it stopped, and aimed directly at me. Malik's breathing turned ragged. That's you. The tapping on the umbilical shifted into a new pattern. 3 taps, 2 taps, 1. A countdown again. My slate, strapped to my wrist, was blank. But a wet sensation prickled at the inside of my glove, like ink seeping through fabric. I looked down. New writing was forming on the slate surface, as if something invisible was drawing it. Seal it. Then beneath it, a second line. Or you stay. My stomach clenched. This wasn't about fixing infrastructure. This was about closing a door. And the implication of the second line was worse than drowning. Stay. In the void. In the cut. In whatever place the black patch belonged to. Malik's voice trembled. We abort. We abort right now. Rourke's voice snapped through, angry and panicked, now. Negative. You finished the weld. You finished the weld or what? He didn't say it. But I heard it anyway in the way the comms hissed. In the way the water pressure pulsed. In the way the void seemed to lean closer. I set my welding rig. Hands shaking. I positioned the patch plate over the cut, like a lid over a mouth. The edges fit too perfectly. Like the metal had been made for this opening. Like someone expected us. As I struck the arc, the void inside the cut shuddered. And for the briefest moment, something inside it tapped back. Not on my helmet. Not on the cable. On the underside of the patch, plate itself. Tap, tap, tap. From the wrong side. Like whatever was behind the door was thanking me for sealing it, or counting the seconds until I finished. Malik survived the ascent to the bell. That's the lie people tell when they don't want to say the worst truth. He made it back to the bell, therefore he survived. He was breathing. His vitals showed movement. When we got him inside and sealed the hatch, Harlan's voice came through comms sharp and immediate. Get his helmet off, Harlan ordered. Now. I fumbled the release clips with shaking hands. My gloves felt too thick, my fingers too dumb. Malik's head lolled slightly as I worked, like he was asleep on his feet. The moment the helmet seal broke, the chamber filled with the sharp metallic smell of his breath. Stale tinged with panic and something else I couldn't place. His eyes were open. Not wide, not rolled back. Open and calm. He stared at the bell wall, as if watching a screen only he could see. Malik, I said before I could stop myself. Harlan's voice snapped through comms. Stop using names. Too late. Malik's gaze drifted toward me slowly, like turning a heavy machine. His lips parted, and in a voice that sounded like his but didn't carry his warmth, he recited the dive checklist. Umbilical clear, he said softly. Gas steady, heat steady, comms steady. My stomach dropped. He wasn't answering me. He was reporting. Harlan's voice came tight and controlled. How many fingers am I holding up? Malik didn't look at Harlan. He didn't look at anything real. He just kept speaking, calm and procedural. Proceed to site, Malik murmured. Follow route. Do not deviate. My throat tightened. That exact phrase had been on our modified job sheet. Rourke's voice cut in, too loud. What the hell is he doing? Harlan ignored him. Sedate him, Harlan said to the bellman. Get him stable. Bring them up. Rourke barked. We're not aborting decompression. Harlan's voice turned into steel. You want a living diver or a dead one, because you're getting one either way. A pause. Then Rourke, quieter, copy. Back in the saturation chamber, time became a slow, viscous thing. They sedated Malik and strapped him down, not because he fought, but because his calm was wrong. He stared at the chamber wall for hours without blinking properly. Every once in a while, his fingers would twitch against the mattress like he was tapping. And every time his fingers twitched, I felt a ghost tap inside my own helmet memory. Tap, tap, tap. Harlan sat across from me with a clipboard, eyes tired. He didn't ask me to tell my story, he asked for facts. Did you respond? He asked. No, I said, and hated the lie. By omission in it. You said his name, Harlan replied, as if reading my mind. Down there. My throat tightened. He was being taken. Harlan nodded slowly. And you sealed the cut. I stared at him. It wanted me to. Harlan's gaze held mine. Yeah, he said quietly. That's what scares me. I swallowed hard. What was it? Harlan looked away, jaw clenched, then back. I don't have a name that fits, he said, and giving it a name is a kind of invitation. I thought of the slate. No name. I nodded once. Harlan leaned forward. They'll write this up as equipment malfunction, he said. A comms glitch. A silt out. Diver panic. Anything that fits in a form. My stomach clenched. And Malik. Harlan's expression tightened. They'll say hypoxia, he said. They'll say narcosis. They'll say he had a medical event. Did he? I whispered. Harlan didn't answer. Not directly. He said, he's talking like a procedure because procedure is what it understands. My throat tightened. So it's inside him. Harlan's eyes flicked to Malik's bunk behind the privacy curtain. Or it's using him like an antenna, he said. The ship's intercom chimed once overhead. A normal sound that made me flinch anyway. Attention crew, a voice said. Maintenance notice. Dive operations resume tomorrow at 0600. My stomach turned. Tomorrow. Again. Harlan swore softly, then caught himself and looked at me with a grim smile that didn't reach his eyes. See, he murmured. Paper always wins. 2 days later, we surfaced. Slowly, carefully. A long decompression that made my joints ache and my mind buzz. When the chamber hatch finally opened and fresh air hit my face, it should have been relief. Instead, it felt like walking out of a nightmare into a different kind of trap. On deck, Rourke met me with a clipboard and a set of forms. His face was tight, his eyes avoiding mine. You're done on this contract, he said. Company's flying you home. I stared at him. And Malik. Rourke's jaw flexed. Medical evacuation, he said. He'll be fine. He didn't sound like he believed it. He shoved the forms at me. Sign standard. No disclosure, no media. I stared at the signature line. I thought of names as hooks. I signed anyway because I wanted off that vessel, and because I already understood how power worked. It didn't need your consent to hurt you. It only preferred paperwork. On the helicopter ride back to shore, I watched the ocean from above. From up there, it looked peaceful. Flat slate, gray under a low ceiling of clouds. You couldn't see the cut we'd sealed. You couldn't see the black patch. You couldn't see the door in the water. That was the point. A week after I got home, I received an email from the company labeled Incident Summary. It was a single paragraph of sanitized nonsense. Unexpected current. Visibility loss. Diver disorientation. Successful completion of repair. No mention of tapping. No mention of Malik's blank calm. No mention of the modified job sheet with our names and tomorrow's date. Attached to the email was a copy of our dive log. My dive log. I opened it and felt my stomach drop. Under notes, in clean type text that wasn't my writing, it said, Diver acknowledged contact. The line below it was worse. Contact acknowledged. Procedure complete. I slammed the laptop shut. That night, in my apartment, dry land, quiet walls. I woke to a sound I hadn't heard since the bell hatch closed. Tap, tap. 3 taps on my bedside table. I lay frozen, breath held, staring at the dark. The tapping came again, slower this time, as if it was being patient. Tap, tap, tap. I didn't answer. I didn't count. I didn't move. And somewhere in the silence between the taps, I heard a faint hiss, like comms opening. Then a whisper in my own voice, soft and intimate, from right beside my ear. Proceed.